With an accident investigation that occurred about 5:45 this morning. So stay off that freeway if you can. Maybe 610 belt. We'll get you around it on 610. Headed south on the East Loop. Clinton have been working an accident in a couple of right lanes. 225 headed out at the East Sam. They finally cleared that one. It's been there all morning as well.
Support comes from Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Texas family owned and operated since 1962. Celebrating fall with a variety of wines, spirits, beers, seasonal sips, and more. Details at specsonline.com. The fun starts here.
I did the rain dance and it worked. Rain later today, tonight into Saturday morning. Probably wake you up early tomorrow morning. 100% chance we're going to get some of that. Maybe get a little break in the afternoon and more Sunday morning. Could see 2 to 4 inches in this area. 73 right now. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. The service of the University of Houston, 9 o'clock.
50 years ago, a production of Porgy and Bess earned the Houston Grand Opera a Tony and a Grammy. Now the company's bringing the production back. I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, HGO's Porgy and Bess legacy.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, how the memory of teachers reading to her in elementary school helped shape author Kate DiCamillo of The Tale of Despereaux and Because of Winn-Dixie fame. Plus, this week's non-expert panel weighs in on intrigues in the news, on the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we check in with Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh about developments related to Polk Street and the George R. Brown Convention Center expansion. We'll start with the news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The federal government says Social Security recipients will get a 2.8% cost of living benefit increase next year. That decision was based on the latest inflation report. Consumer prices were up in September by 3% over what they were a year ago. The reports were delayed by the federal government shutdown in its 24th day. Amid the shutdown, a facility in Oklahoma where air traffic controllers are trained is remaining open. As NPR's Joel Rose reports, funding for that training is being extended for another month.
During the last government shutdown 6 years ago, the FAA's training academy in Oklahoma City was forced to close. That had a lasting impact, adding to the shortage of air traffic controllers. This time, the FAA made sure to keep the academy open, with funding extended through at least the end of November. That's according to Nick Daniels, the president of the union that represents air traffic controllers. He says air traffic control trainees are still getting paid for now.
The very difficult part is the second that they graduate, they then graduate to not receiving a paycheck.
Those trainees are joining more than 13,000 controllers who are required to work without pay until the shutdown ends. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has wrapped up his trip to Israel today. He visited the U.S.-Israel Civil Military Coordination Center in southern Israel. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports.
After touring the center, established as part of President Trump's peace plan, Rubio called the coordination of the ceasefire in Gaza an historic mission, saying Washington and its international partners are working to sustain the truce, deliver aid, and pave the way for a stabilization force to enter the territory.
There will never be peace as long as there's an area or a territory that's being used as a launch pad to threaten Israel's security. Everyone understands that, and everyone that signed on to this deal understands that.
When asked about the role of the United Nations, Rubio called the UN's Relief and Work Agency for the Palestinian territories a, quote, subsidiary of Hamas, echoing the Israeli government's criticism of the agency, an opinion the UN's highest court this week rejected. Rubio said it wouldn't be allowed to work in Gaza, but that other UN agencies would. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
President Trump says he won't surge federal troops to San Francisco as he had threatened. He says he talked with several Bay Area tech leaders who urged against it. San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie says he told Trump in a phone call his city is on the rise.
We have work to do, and we would welcome the continued partnership with FBI, DEA, ATF, and U.S. attorneys to get drugs and drug dealers off of our streets. But having the military and militarized immigration enforcement in our city will hinder our recovery.
But federal immigration agents have been arriving at Coast Guard facilities in the Bay Area this week. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations Other contributors include Sony Pictures Classics, presenting Blue Moon, a new film directed by Richard Linklater, starring Ethan Hawke, Margaret Qualley, Bobby Cannavale, and Andrew Scott, now playing everywhere. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Staffing issues could possibly lead to another ground stop at Houston airports today. There was a ground stop at Bush Intercontinental Airport late yesterday. It was lifted around 6:30 last night. Staffing issues have become common recently in the midst of the government shutdown. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy previously warned about airport delays around the country worsening as the now 3-week shutdown continues. Houston Metro leaders say they're working on improving the city's Metro Rail Red Line after reported delays. News 88.7's Michael Adkisson has more.
Transit leaders acknowledge the Red Line is facing delays and other problems, but they also say retiming traffic signals in downtown Houston was necessary. Here's Metro's interim president, Tom Jazian.
We have made some progress, but we've got some additional work to do. There is no question we will get our system back and restored and getting efficient travel up and down the Red Line.
Sri Reddy, an executive vice president with Metro, says the signal changes are taking place across all of downtown, not just along the Red Line. One big adjustment is traffic signals shifted from operating on a 90-second cycle to an 80-second cycle, which Metro says should help speed up traffic. I'm Michael Atkinson, News 88.7.
A Baytown police officer had to be taken by helicopter to the hospital after his squad car crashed into the side of a van last night. 2 juveniles were also life-flighted, with other juveniles taken by ambulance. It's unclear how many people were in the van, but one person reportedly died from their injuries. Baytown police have not said what led up to the accident. We're finally going to be getting some rain in the region. Bradley Brokamp is with the National Weather Service. He says today we have a 50% shot at seeing some precipitation. However, tomorrow is the main event.
Rainfall totals throughout the whole period still generally 2 to 4 inches, though it's entirely possible some places will see some higher amounts, getting upwards of 4 to 6 inches or so. You get some storms training over one spot repeatedly.
I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on News 88.7 and on YouTube. Coming up this hour, Kate DiCamillo, author of The Tale of Despereaux and Because of Winn-Dixie. Also this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and the history and legacy of the Houston Grand Opera's production of the Gershwin opera Porgy and Bess. First, though, a homeless shelter in Edo's delayed while the Polk Street closure continues to draw pushback. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh has been following both of those stories. Amid developments at City Hall, he joins us now. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Craig.
Let's start with the proposed facility the Whitmire administration previously characterized as a homeless super hub. The mayor now calls it a living center for the homeless. What is this concept exactly, and where would it be?
Yeah, they dropped the Super Hub moniker after some community pushback. They said they realized that was not a good name. So this living center would hold up to 320 beds, according to the administration, functioning as a temporary shelter and service referral center for homeless people. They call it a front door to the region's services and housing programs for the most vulnerable, most difficult to serve people who've been out on the street, in some cases for years. The proposed facility is really a key pillar of Whitmire's push to functionally end street homelessness in Houston by the end of next year. And in terms of where it is, it's located at 419 Emancipation Avenue, right next to Shell Energy Stadium. It still needs to be purchased by the city, and that purchase is what's been delayed.
That's what City Council was going to take up on Wednesday. It's been delayed a week. How come?
So it's been delayed 2 weeks, actually. Last week, Whitmire's administration pulled the purchase from the agenda. It was back on the agenda this week, but Houston City Council members Mario Castillo and Julian Ramirez tagged the item, delaying it by another week. They said there needs to be more community engagement, which there was during a meeting organized by Castillo last night.
Okay, and what came out of that meeting?
So we heard mostly opposition from community members, a few handful of people in favor, but most of them were concerned about safety, optics, and the price tag. It's a $16 million purchase with annual operating cost of $10 to $14 million. The first few years of funding are figured out, but the plan gets a little vague in the long run, and the city is grappling with chronic deficits. On the safety side, the administration says it will increase police patrols in the area, and ultimately, the administration argues this will actually reduce visible homelessness in East Downtown, in Second Ward, downtown, and Midtown. It won't bring more people to the area just hanging out on the streets.
This is one part of the city's multi-pronged initiative to address homelessness. Remind us about another part, the city's so-called civility ordinance. What does it call for?
Yeah, so the civility ordinance prohibits lying down, sitting, or placing personal possessions on sidewalks in certain parts of the city, mostly during the day. Recently, it was expanded to all hours in downtown and East Downtown. And after that expansion, tickets for violations of sidewalk obstruction rules ticked up, according to data we analyzed from the city's municipal courts. It's worth noting, around this proposed facility in East Downtown, it is inside the civility ordinance, but the zone ends just a few yards to the east. The mayor's administration has said they are exploring further expansion so that there's a bit of a wider net around that facility.
All right. Meantime, there has been quite a bit of pushback against the closure of Polk Street as part of plans to expand the George R. Brown Convention Center. What's the latest on that?
So after months of contentious community engagement, the Houston City Council took the first of 2 votes last week that would lead to the closure of a 2-block section of Polk Street. This is a major thoroughfare connecting vehicular, cyclist, and pedestrian traffic from the East End to downtown. That's why there's so much consternation. Officials previously said they were aiming for a closure this month, but the second vote hasn't been scheduled just yet, and last week they told me they weren't sure, so we're still waiting to see a timeline. Also noteworthy, last week, the City Council unanimously approved a related agreement that attaches strings to the eventual closure. It requires ongoing public engagement, the creation of a community advisory board to provide input on the convention center expansion, and in the most direct steps towards connectivity, maintaining pedestrian access along Polk Street and evaluating the conversion of nearby Leland Street into a 2-way. That agreement is really kind of the big new thing.
Yeah, so engagement, the board, and evaluation, those are all terms that don't really require anything to happen, though, right?
It's a memorandum of understanding, so it is binding. But yes, like you said, especially with Leland Street, it is an evaluation. Houston First says it is absolutely their intention, but when I asked them, they declined to give a guarantee.
Where does this leave residents and businesses, anybody that's affected just by that 2-block closure along Polk?
Yeah, I mean, they currently have an unclear timeline both on the closure of Polk Street and when the alternative route along Leland Street would be opened, or really even if it would be opened.
Yeah, I guess we've got to point out, obviously, if Leland were to go 2 ways, that of course, would also impact businesses and residents right around there as well.
It would take time.
Yeah. Should we anticipate any further debate about this moving forward, or has that ship now pretty well sailed?
Councilmember Carolyn Evans-Shabazz, who represents 3rd Ward, was a yes vote last week, but she said her position on the second vote will depend on whether there's further community engagement and possible compromise in the coming weeks. The agreement we mentioned that was approved last week did not go as far as some community members wanted. They had been demanding Houston First, which owns the convention center, invest $250 million in infrastructure, mobility, and engagement improvements in the East End area. Councilmember Edward Pollard was the only no vote, which we can expect to stay consistent with the second vote. So there could be more debate at the second vote, but yes, this process appears to be moving ahead.
And do we know, again, when the date is for that second vote at this point?
So it was not on this week's agenda. We haven't seen next week's agenda. It could be next week, could be in the coming weeks. There's no clear timeline just yet.
News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh, always keeping tabs on what's going on in City Hall. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, the author of The Tale of Despereaux, and because of Winn-Dixie, describes how teachers reading to her in grade school impacted the course of her life. Kate DiCamillo talks with our Michael Haggerty as Houston Matters continues.
Hi, I'm Michael Schaefer. My partner Ellen and I have been proud supporters of public radio and TV for decades.
We really would be lost without our daily fix of unbiased national and local news, cultural programming, and great entertainment.
But with recent federal defunding, stations like Houston Public Media face real challenges.
Now's the time to step up.
Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Thank you.
A few minutes to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Through research and innovation, Baylor continues to redefine what's possible in healthcare and medical discovery.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is made possible in part by Ellen Benninghoven and Dr. Michael Schaefer, and with gifts from listeners like you.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. On Tuesday's show, we talked with the Houston Chronicle's Lisa Falkenberg about her column sharing stories of HISD early elementary school teachers squeezing reading time into their otherwise tightly controlled school day and sometimes hiding it from district leadership. Falkenberg shared this example.
I talked to a young girl who described how her teacher wanted to read The Tale of Despereaux by Kate DiCamillo. It's an amazing book. In order to do that, they had this little drill where they would put a stack of worksheets under the book. And then when the teacher gave the signal, they would immediately put the book in the desk and start doing the worksheets. So how do we get to a point in HISD where to read children's literature, you have to sneak around like it's some secret plot?
Many of us remember teachers reading books to us as we sat with legs crossed on the classroom rug. It was, as it turns out, a life-altering experience for Kate DiCamillo, the author Falkenberg mentioned. DiCamillo's popular books also include Because of Winn-Dixie, and she has a new book out and will be here in town on Sunday for an Inprint Houston event. DiCamillo tells our Michael Haggerty about teachers reading to her and how many of her main characters' independent streaks probably have something to do with who she was in those grade school days.
What I write comes from the 8-year-old me, and I grew up in a single parent home, and as many kids do, you wonder why that is. It's never fully explained to you, and so it's kind of something that's haunted me, and it keeps on popping up. Not in every book, but it's in a lot of them.
You eventually have these characters, often take matters into their own hands. What do you enjoy about empowering them in that way?
Well, to me, that is the thing that as a reader and as a writer, I love about stories is that empowering. And, when you read and you see somebody else doing something, taking their fate in their own hands, it kind of gives that message to you that you too can change. And so even now as an adult reader, that's what I'm always looking for, is that how do I live in the world? And so often fiction delivers that news implicitly, I think.
Has writing about characters like that, vaguely similar experiences as yours? I imagine that's helped you. Is that the case in some way?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You mean as in, is it free therapy? Absolutely.
Right.
And it's helped me and it's changed me, and to the point where the last full-length novel that I did, which is entitled Ferris, is about a complete family. And it's after I finished that book, it occurred to me that I never would have been able to write that complete family without telling all the other stories and finding my way into this community of readers, which kind of so the writing of the stories and also the finding of that community has kind of made me whole in a way.
It's beautiful. Some people journal, some people go to therapy. You're writing these stories, and I imagine it's great because you can make the characters do whatever you want, do things that maybe you never did or wish you had.
Yeah, and sometimes I can make them do what I want, and sometimes they do what they want. Yeah.
So this new book, Lost Evangeline, is the latest in a series about this fairy tale land. For those who aren't familiar about the series, can you tell us about the fairy tale land and the series before we get to this book?
So they are fairy tales. I think of them as fairy tale novellas. So they're not quite novels and they're not quite short stories. And they take place in a land called Narindi, and everybody's like, where is Narindi? And I don't know, like our world, except not. If you squint, you can see the magic of this place. And Lost Evangeline is the last in a trilogy about Narendi. The first book was The Puppets of Spellhorse, which is about the journey of 5 puppets who were friends. And the second was The Hotel Balzar, about a mysterious countess. And now here we are with Evangeline, who, the best way to describe her, I guess, without stepping onto Hans Christian Andersen's territory, is she's a Thumbelina-esque character.
A very tiny girl that a shoemaker discovers in a shoe that he's working on,
Yes.
and adopts. Is very cute, very, very sweet, and very fairy tale. It really captures the fairy tale vibe. So
Yeah, it was so much fun to tap into all of those. My grandfather was a shoemaker, but shoemaker is a fairy tale, and Thumbelina, Andersen made it famous, but it was a folk tale that existed that he retold. So that notion has been around for forever. There's an evil stepmother. There's, a bag of coins, all of those fairy tale tropes. It was really fun to use them.
tell us what Evangeline and her father, adoptive father, go through in this story.
The stepmother is jealous, and she's jealous of their friendship, and somebody wants to buy Evangeline, and the stepmother facilitates that. And so the father and the daughter become separated, and both of them are united in their love of the sea and the romance of the sea and going to sea and the freedom of that. So the book is a journey, an interior journey and an exterior journey. And it's looking for someone and looking for yourself, I think. And also, being very small does not stop you from being very brave.
Yeah, and the daughter is kind of almost symbolic of the father's dreams of going to the sea, and he hasn't done that, and then she's symbolic in that she's small, and that makes her more vulnerable and has to be more courageous because of that. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, it's interesting. This always happens to me. I'm listening to you talk about it and thinking, oh, yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I never know what I'm doing. And then when I do interviews for books or talk to readers, it's like I see another element and another element. And then it helps me when I go out and talk about it the next time. But that's true. Yeah.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty, talking with children's author Kate DiCamillo, whose latest book is called Lost Evangeline. She'll be in Houston with illustrator Sophie Blackle for an event with Inprint on Sunday, October 26th at 2 p.m. at Meyerland Performing and Visual Arts Middle School. So how is writing fairy tale kind of different than some of the other things you write, and does it present any sort of new challenges, new opportunities for you as a writer?
The beauty of fairy tales is, just when we were going through the fairy tale tropes, the shoemaker, the bag of gold, the evil stepmother, is you have the framework of those things. And so they act kind of as ballast, but within it, you have this freedom to play with all of those elements. And I grew up with fairy tales. And so it's just like, it's wonderfully freeing, and it also seems like I'm going even deeper into that child that I was.
And it's interesting to get new fairy tales that you're providing in this sense. There's a lot of familiar things there, but something new. And as I imagine, like reading this book out loud to my children, and I immediately, as I was reading it, you immediately connect with the part of you that's a child, the part of you that remembers hearing fairy tales told or seeing, Disney movies about them or whatever it was. It's very easy to connect with those, your inner child with these.
Yeah, it's a shortcut to that kid and all of us.
As a person who writes for children, I mean, do you ever worry about screen time preventing or limiting the amount of reading that people are doing, or are still people finding it enough still, kids?
Well, I exist in a perpetual state of worry, but I also can close my eyes and see the faces of the kids that I see at events. and them coming through the signing lines and how they hold the books. And it is still going on. It still matters. It's still powerful. And the other thing I think about that gives me so much hope is teachers who are reading out loud to kids in the classroom. And I always think about myself. I was really fortunate in that I had a mother who read to me, who bought me books, who took me to the library. But I can remember my second grade teacher reading to us every day after lunch, and I lived for it. And I think, golly, if it mattered that much to me, what about the kids that aren't getting it anyplace else? And there are a lot of teachers who are doing that. And every time I'm in front of a group of people, I ask the teachers to raise their hands so that we can all thank them. They're changing lives, they're saving lives. There's not an adult. I've sat around in a room full of adults, and everybody has a story that they remember their teacher reading to them. It is a life-shaping kind of thing.
Yeah, and talking about the physical media and the children, the way they hold the books and all that, that's a powerful image. And you think about, like, these days, I mean, there's so much choice and access that we can, if you've got the money and the Wi-Fi, you can stream anything, anytime, but there's a generation of people that are not used to having a physical thing to hold, like whether it's a movie, it's the actual DVD, like, oh, is that movie going to disappear off of Netflix this week and I won't be able to watch it? There is still a desire, and the success of local bookstores has apparently proven that people still want the physical thing.
Yeah, they do. And the physical thing, I think, it's almost like an anchor, And when I think about all those bookstores, and when I'm in those bookstores all over the country, House business is fantastic. And people are going in there for the physical book and for what the physical book symbolizes, which is community, And I hear from kids who write me who talk about keeping the book, this book or that book, by their bed. It makes them feel safe. And so I think that books aren't going to go away. I'll say this to kids sometimes when I meet them in signing lines. It's like, even if we have never met, I still feel you out there reading the book. This is the miracle of storytelling and books, is that it connects us, and that, which goes all the way back to making a whole family and Ferris, and being able to do that. And part of the reason I was able to do that is because of this community of readers, most of whom I'll never meet, but I can feel them there. We're making a world together, and it makes both of us feel safer,
Kate DiCamillo is the author of The Tale of Despereaux, Flora and Ulysses, and because of Winn-Dixie, her latest is called Lost Evangeline. She'll be here in Houston for an event with Inprint this Sunday at 2 o'clock. That's at Meyerland Performing and Visual Arts Middle School. There's a link to more information in today's post at houstonmatters.org. Just ahead, John Williams' music can really reach some people emotionally, including a National Guardsman who's being sued for detaining a man who followed him around playing the Imperial March, Darth Vader's theme from The Empire Strikes Back, on a cell phone. We'll explain on this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly as Houston Matters continues.
Want to binge All Creatures Great and Small, catch up on Nova, or revisit Ken Burns' documentaries? You can with PBS Passport. With a gift of $5 or more per month to Houston Public Media, you'll get access to PBS Passport that lets you watch your favorite programs anytime you want. Support the programs you love and enjoy them on your own schedule with PBS Passport. Make your gift now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe. R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Good Reason Houston, with the 2025 Houston Public Education Snapshot, tracking how Houston's schools are preparing students today for a living wage tomorrow. Learn more at goodreasonhouston.org.
A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Mary Flood, consultant with Andrevet Legal Media and Marketing, Marco Roberts, chairman of the Texas Conservative Liberty Forum, and Ernie Manouse, co-host of Houston Public Media's Hello Houston program, weekday mornings at 11 on News 88.7 and the Tube of U's. Mary, Marco, Ernie, welcome to Houston Matters. Good morning.
Good morning.
The Tube of U's?
The Tube of U's. Panel, the ACLU filed a lawsuit in federal district court Thursday on behalf of D.C. resident Sam O'Hara against a member of the Ohio National Guard, 4 D.C. police officers, and the district itself. According to the lawsuit, as a widely seen video O'Hara shared last month also shows, officers detained him on a public street in northwest Washington because he was walking behind National Guard members deployed by President Trump while playing on his phone the Imperial March from The Empire Strikes Back. Bum, 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 bum. You know that one. According to the suit, when he wouldn't stop, the Guard member called D.C. police, who promptly handcuffed O'Hara and briefly detained him. O'Hara, who was never charged with a crime, says he was protesting what he characterized as an unnecessary occupation in the district and that his First Amendment right to do so was being infringed on. The ACLU sues over a D.C. man's detention for playing Darth Vader's theme on his phone on a city street. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Mary Flood, start us off.
It is good, Craig, and it's important. And man, I applaud the ACLU and Mr. O'Hara. I am deeply troubled by what's happening legally and illegally in this country, the overreach from the executive office and the capitulation from the legal branch, and this cavalier disregard for the law, whether it be about naturalized citizens or shooting at boats or Fourth Amendment rights, it's driving me nuts. It's really scary. There's a legal principle, and as a lawyer, I should know how to say it in Latin, but I'm not one of those. And basically is ignorance of the law is no excuse. And ignorance of the law is especially no excuse when you're working for the government. And these guys didn't know the First Amendment and didn't know the Fourth Amendment. You know, a lot of us get confused about what the First Amendment is, and I've had friends call and say, my boss won't let me say this. Well, yeah, it's private property. They're not the government. It doesn't matter. But here it did, and they're at Logan Circle. This is the place you go for, like, avocado toast. This is not a scary part of D.C., and I just love the ACLU, and I have for decades, and a lot of people think it's a liberal organization, not just because I have joined it, but because
Exhibit A.
They represent guys like this, but they also represented Ann Coulter and the NRA and the gay-hating Westboro Baptist Church. And in about 50 years ago, they represented Nazis who wanted to march in Skokie, which was over 50% Jewish, and the ACLU attorney who represented the Nazis was Jewish. They're like, they don't care about liberal or conservative. They care about the Constitution and the First Amendment and the right to free speech and the right to press and the right to assembly. I agree with Mr. O'Hara that this is a dangerous occupation and that the soldiers patrolling Logan or Portland, these are places to get your cortata and your espresso martini. And it's really frightening to me that the politicization of our legislature, of the executive branch, of the military, and it's frightening the capitulation as well, including by our governor. I haven't had a congressperson since March when Sylvester Turner died, and it's because it helps his party. So I've got taxation without representation because it helps Greg Abbott's party. This party over people, party over the rule of law is driving me crazy. But I love O'Hara, and I think this was really clever.
I've been looking at the text of the First Amendment. I can't find any references in there to either avocado toast or espresso. Just so you know.
I think it's in the footnotes, dear.
I'll have to look that up. All right, good, bad, or ugly, Marco Roberts.
I think it's a little ugly. I think it's all performative. First of all, I just have very little respect for a grown man who's going around following people with blasting music. I mean, he talks about protesting. The First Amendment, certain areas are very clear-cut. But then you start getting to this little gray area where it starts crossing into harassment. Can you actually harass someone? Can you follow, let's say, somebody from the Houston Chronicle, a reporter, and start harassing them with music and following them around? You couldn't do that. You would not be allowed to do that. And in fact, there's a case which you might be familiar with from the United States versus Cassidy, where it talks about the fact that you can't cross that line into actually following people, right? You can't do that. And one of the things I noticed about the lawsuit that was filed is, I mean, my reaction was when I first saw this, I did laugh. It was funny. You hear the music and it's funny, right? But I can see how it could be irritating. And one of the things I noticed in the lawsuit was it wasn't just that he was standing there playing the music, is that as these officers start to walk away from him, he kept following them, to wherever they were going. And that's when they said, stop it, stop following us. And then he persisted. And then that's when he was detained. He wasn't arrested. He was detained. So I don't know where the court might, but I'm just going to say this is a gray area where did he cross that line into harassment? I think there's a case to be made for that. I also think the whole thing is performative. I think all our politics today are more performative than they've ever been, which is a little bit disappointing because there's a lot of serious issues, and I'm just not thinking that this guy is just looking for clickbait. He's going to get a lot of TikTok videos and all this stuff. Is he really accomplishing anything? I don't think so. I don't think a single mind was changed by what he was doing. The people that like what he's doing are all for it. The people that don't like what he's doing are offended by it. That's all there's to it. So there's serious issues to think about. I would even say, sure, protests, like No Kings protests. Those were pretty peaceful protests, and they had signs, but they weren't following anyone. They were just, here we are, and this is what we think, and that's what they should be doing. So I would just simply say that normally protest, if they're doing something, do that. But I would say crossing the line is when you start following people who are walking away from you.
Does it matter which John Williams score?
Well, if I liked it, then maybe I'd be okay.
Yeah, because
with
if it was the Indiana Jones theme or Superman or something like that, maybe you'd feel.
Well, if it was a happy tune, sure.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe, but.
All right, well, let's check in now with George Lucas's inspiration for Darth Vader, Ernie Manouse. Good, bad, or ugly? No, that's a different movie.
That was Darth Vader.
I don't know
Very
about that.
bad.
I
Darth
went
Vader.
where you went to.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure when Marco was referring to him, who he was referring to. If he was referring to the president about all this being performative and all of that, then I agree with him.
Not.
If he was referring to the protester, then I don't agree with him. I think it is good for the protester, ugly for our whole country where we're at right now with all of this. In a public space, if troops have assembled, if they are there, and even if they are walking away, as long as it's still in a public space. Following them home, I'm with you on that, Marco. Following them into a building, into private property, yeah, you don't do that. In a public space, they're there. They have followed people too. So I think that we're at a place where we are, and it sounds dumb to even say it because we all know it now. It's gotten to a very dangerous place when it comes to how we interpret people who have the right to assemble and to protest and to have their voices heard. And what I think is good about this is the way they're finding fresh new ways, they being the folks that are protesting these occupations and this military action in the government, is they're trying to find clever, humorous but thoughtful ways of protesting. Playing that music is funny. It's clever, but it makes a point too. It's different than, smashing through buildings, breaking things, starting riots that then people are injured and harmed. So we've got to, collectively as a nation, we've all got to take a breath, is what I think. And we've got to bring down all of the tension. And kudos to him for doing something clever and interesting without inciting violence or anything like that. He should not have been detained. There you go. Did I answer?
Well, I'm just going to add a couple of things on that.
Okay, add.
I think the court case does say that it's curious, but it actually says streets themselves are not public spaces, plazas and other areas, because they're traffic areas. So you can't necessarily do that. The other thing I would say is that I do think it's performative. I do think that he is clearly trying to get people to follow his podcast and his whatever it is he's doing. And I don't know, the King's Day protests are a perfect example of what protests should look like. And there's millions of people, or thousands, I don't know, there's a lot of people protesting all over the country, right?
About 7
million.
million.
And that was great. But now we have this one guy who's got all this attention, and so we're all focused on that. And I think that also is performative.
But there's one thing that we need to look at, and that is that it is not very American, not very normal to have uniform military on our streets like this. The only other place I've been where you see uniformed military on the streets and in museums was when I was in Israel right after they declared war on Lebanon. Otherwise, this isn't our country, and this isn't Logan Circle, and this isn't Portland. And I really love that the guy came up with a clever way to continue to protest and continue to put it on TikTok, not just for himself, but for the country. We shouldn't have the military going after citizens like this. We don't need the military in Logan Circle or in Portland, Oregon. And this is a misuse of them. And it's crossing the line. Yes, it's crossing legal lines for us to be doing this. And I think the fact that he's bringing some attention to this is wildly important.
Do we know how loud he was playing the music? Sound ordinances may have been broken.
It says in the lawsuit that it was, you could hear it, but it wasn't excessively loud. It repeats it over and over in the lawsuit.
Then I go back to being okay.
It's the speaker of his cell phone, so there's going to be a limit to volume there.
Tiny.
But
irritating, maybe.
Yeah, could be irritating.
Panel, Houston's first ever Fleet Week, originally planned for next month, has been postponed. Houston Mayor John Whitmire announced the move on Thursday, citing the ongoing federal government shutdown. As Houston Public Media's Kyle McClanagan reports, the city still plans to celebrate the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard next year. No specific date has been selected. The plan had been to bring ships and aircraft to Houston to coincide with the Navy and Marine Corps' 250th birthdays. The latest impact of the shutdown, no Houston Fleet Week this year. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Marco.
Well, we've never had one before, so it's disappointing for sure. I'm not going to say it's good. It would have been nice to have had this here happen. I'm just going to say that I didn't even know that there was going to be a Fleet Week, so it's kind of like I'm not missing it necessarily. It's very difficult. If this was something that had happened and we'd been having this for years, maybe I'd be more concerned about it. But it was a brand new thing. It'll come back next year for our 250th anniversary at that point. So, I'm not going to say it's good, but I'm not seeing a real problem with it at this point. I think we're all disappointed with the shutdown, and I know a lot of folks have, I'm sure Mary and Ernie have different views on this, but the shutdown can be, ended by the Democrats anytime they want. So, if that's what's going to be the consequences.
Simple rules change, but who's
or the people who are in control? Yeah.
But no. So I would say it's a minor concern. It's a minor disappointment for all of us. But I do wonder how many of us. You know what? I imagine that more of us have learned about Fleet Week than we would have otherwise, and now we will know for next year.
That's a big silver lining. Good, bad, or ugly? Ernie Manouse.
The choices, again, I have trouble with. I would go with good, because if you're going to do something, do it right. If there's problems and you can't get it done, as Marco was saying, it's not like a long-standing tradition and people are suddenly disappointed that they're not going to go to their annual Fleet Week. But the fact that, okay, it's not coming together. I also think probably I don't fully invest in the reasons we're saying is why it was canceled. I think it was getting close and things weren't in order enough. That personally how I feel. But, wait, get it right. When we were launching Hello Houston, we kept moving our launch date till we got the cameras working and the studio done and all that. So you wait sometimes so that when you finally launch, you get it right. Maybe we still didn't get it right on Hello Houston, but we launched. And same thing with Fleet Week. Wait. Okay, next year we'll be in a better position, and maybe they can actually have water here in Houston that they can bring the ships to for Fleet Week.
All right, good, bad, or ugly, Mary?
One, you got it right with Hello Houston.
Thank you.
And I think it's bad because, the shutdown's obviously causing many more things, but in the 80s, I got a chance to be on the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt in the Mediterranean. I was the only woman on a ship of thousands of people, and I got to see how the Marines and the Navy guys on there lived and worked, and I have infinite respect for these guys, and also for how cool it is to be catapulted off of an aircraft carrier at 3Gs. That was super fun.
Is that how they got rid of you?
It was, yeah, exactly. It wasn't just me alone. I was in an airplane. Just so you know.
That's better.
A couple hours on an aircraft carrier with Mary, and that was enough.
Just shot her right off.
It was so good. Anyway, but obviously the shutdown, there are people in food service lines and people out of work and people working without pay and people worrying about how they're going to pay their rent, and some of the working people are being obviously ignored by both parties to some degree, but I think the party in control may have a little more control. So anyway, I love the idea of Fleet Week. I love the idea of honoring the soldiers and the Marines, and so I hope we get it together next year.
Panel, congratulations are in order for Norbert, a pig in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, who now owns the Guinness World Record for the fastest 10 meters pushing a skateboard by a pig. Norbert pulled off the feat in 11.32 seconds. Owner Vincent Barron says after just a handful of sessions, Norbert looked like a natural on the board, so much so, in fact, that similarities to skateboarding champion Tony Hawk led Norbert to earn the nickname Tony Pork. May I say this is a missed opportunity? Tony Hog? Isn't that closer to Tony Hawk?
Oh, it is.
What are they doing?
They aren't the punsters you are.
Just saying. A pig rides a skateboard 10 meters in just over 11 seconds. It's true, even if the story doesn't sound kosher. But all right, enough with the puns. Is it good, bad, or ugly, Ernie?
Craig's puns ugly. Story.
I agree with you.
Yeah. See, we find unity on this show. My bigger question is, what do they do at the Guinness Book of World Records? Where do they come up with these ridiculous categories?
I think the brand name may be a clue.
The Guinness part. Great for the pig. I'm happy for him. I can't ride a skateboard, period. So that pig's got one up on me. I just think it's kind of, you look at the different categories and it's like, I don't know if I just don't remember this from when I was a child, but I thought they were like kind of more normal categories where it's like bouncing a basketball for a certain amount of time. Oh, you got the a pig riding. Are there a whole bunch of pigs competing on this across the country and this one won it?
There could be.
I don't
there
think
could
so,
be.
Though.
This could start a cascade. Good, bad, or ugly, Mary?
It's good. It's clearly very important work. The Guinness people, I love a diversion these days, and the Guinness people obviously are giving it to us, and also the chance for puns, and you've passed on so many, and I thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
But I was kind of surprised. I mean, I especially acknowledge the balance of this guy, but he was 175 pounds and not really a cute little piggy. I mean, that snout was, anyway. But,
So you object due to his visuals.
Yeah, it wasn't quite what I expected from Tony Pork.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly, Marco?
It's one of those things where I just have to struggle to care and I have to do what I can to want it. But I'm with you, Ernie. I used to love, I would buy every year's edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. Because those were like actual categories, right? The longest bridge, the tallest building, the biggest. I mean, these were like things that were real,
right?
And then nowadays they have these categories. One of them was, I saw the longest banana car.
Point taken. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I hear you, and I think you're on to something there. Mary, Marco, Ernie, thank you both. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
All right.
My name is Andrew Foistel. I go by Drew.
Hello, I'm Bob Maniger from the Ed and Jean Matthews Foundation. PBS has been a part of our family for generations, and we are proud supporters of Houston Public Media. From PBS Kids programming that supports children and their parents to PBS NewsHour that we rely on to learn about what's going on in our world. Your support keeps PBS available for our community across Greater Houston. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Mission of the International Space Station.
122 million miles flown during 25 challenging space flights. Welcome home, Endeavour.
Hubble was my first mission. It was my first chance to go outside and work in a spacesuit. It's amazing to be out there in a spacesuit. It's a very different experience having just the separation of the visor of your helmet separating you from the vacuum of space, so life from death essentially. It's not the same as when we're inside the spacecraft, inside the shuttle or inside the space station looking down on the Earth with all that metal between us. Really not a lot of metal, but we feel more secure, like we're inside a home or a vehicle. But when you're in a spacesuit, I feel a little bit more vulnerable, like I'm a lot closer to space. like I can feel space more. And the views from the spacesuit, just from that visor, when you're just holding on with the fingertips to the spacecraft as you're flying around the Earth, are just incredible, and gives us a very unique perspective looking down on the planet as we're performing our work. In fact, it's often hard to concentrate or focus on the things that you need to do because of the view that you have of the Earth at the time. But we all know we're there to get the job done, and we've had very specific training for these missions. The thing that surprised me the most about being in space is how much I missed planet Earth. I missed being on Earth with the people I love and family and friends. I say this, that astronauts on Earth want to be in space, and astronauts in space want to be on Earth. I'm Drew Feustel. I'm a NASA astronaut, and you're listening to Houston Matters.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 or more per month, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a few minutes to make a big difference. Become a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
I'm Christopher Kimball from Milk Street Radio. If you've ever carved a pumpkin for Halloween, you have Victorian pranksters to thank.
Under cover of darkness, they would wave this thing in front of a farmer's window or a neighbor's window, scare the daylights out of them, and then run away as fast as they could.
The unlikely origins of the jack-o'-lantern. That's coming up this week on Milk Street Radio from PRX.
Sunday afternoon at 1 here on News 88.7.
Nearly 50 years ago, a production of Porgy and Bess earned the Houston Grand Opera a Tony and a Grammy.
I got plenty of nothing, and nothing's plenty for me. I got no car, got no mule, got no misery. Yes, you is my woman now. Take Nessa, take Nessa,
Music from HGO's 1976 production of Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, now the celebrated American opera that was once very controversial but ultimately embraced, returns to the stage. And here to tell us more about it is Khori Dastoor, Houston Grand Opera's General Director and CEO, and Howard Pollack, Professor of Musicology at the University of Houston. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning to you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Professor Pollack, let's start with the opera itself. Gershwin, along with his brother Ira and author DuBose Hayward, adapted it from Hayward's 1925 novel and a subsequent play. This is about a homeless, disabled black man in Charleston who tries to rescue a woman from a dangerous drug dealer. While opera fans a century ago were used to melodrama, this story certainly had that. There's a lot in there that they were not used to, right?
Including having an entirely black cast and chorus, which had never been done before.
And what drew Gershwin to tell this story and put on this production?
He had read the novel, or novella, I should say, and was very attracted by it and thought it would make a great opera. At the time, DuBose and his wife Dorothy were in the process of adapting it as a play for Broadway, and so they didn't at the moment have an interest in turning it into a libretto. But seeing the play only reinforced Gershwin's decision to turn it into an opera, and in the early 1930s, he had the opportunity to do so when DuBose and Dorothy Hayward were free to do it. And to help things along, George's brother Ira, who was his main collaborator, who wrote the lyrics to most of his Broadway shows, helped by writing some of the lyrics as well. So it was a four-person team effort.
And how was it received?
It was received rather well. He could not have it produced in an opera company because no opera company was prepared to have an entirely black cast.
at the time. So it premiered on Broadway, and because of that, it had to be cut significantly. Operas can go on longer, as those of you who know the Wagner operas, for instance, know that operas can go on longer than a Broadway musical can. But it had over 100 performances, and I think the critics more or less approved of it very much.
So embraced by Broadway, but not necessarily by the opera world. Is that a fair characterization?
I would say so. And when it came back for a famous revival on Broadway, they even cut the recitatives. You know, opera has both song, many operas have both what we call arias or songs embedded in the play, but they also have sort of a dialogue that's called recitative between the songs that's sung. And when it came back to Broadway, they pretty much cut the sung recitative to make it more amenable. Of course, today, with Hamilton and many other shows, the idea of a through-sung play is not unknown to Broadway.
Right. Khori, so that's kind of the dynamic that we saw for really the first 40 years of the existence of this production. And then HBO comes along in 1976. Why do you think that production was embraced by the opera world? And clearly the fact that it received both a Tony and a Grammy reflects the broader culture as well.
Well, I think it's important to sort of understand a little bit about the founding ethos of Houston Grand Opera to explain this phenomenon of the 1976 tour. When HGO came to be in the mid-50s, of course, we were in a very segregated South, Jim Crow era. Walter Herbert, the founder of the company, was casting black artists alongside white artists at a time when that wasn't done. So the idea of sort of radical integration was in our founding DNA. And when the opportunity to restore Porgy and Bess to the Opera House, which was what its creators intended, when that opportunity presented itself, David Gockley accepted the challenge. And that tour really established not only Porgy and Bess in the operatic canon, but something more important, which is reclaiming opera, which had been a historically European form, as viable in an American context. So putting the fusion of jazz and blues and classical music together and reclaiming this form, which is so flexible and able to accept a variety of genres, and putting that in a grand opera house, that is really a defining moment, not just for Houston Grand Opera, but for everything in opera. And that's a legacy we continue to this day with commissioning new works and telling different stories and infusing different genres in the most diverse city in our country.
And why have you decided to present Porgy and Bess again now, nearly 50 years later?
Well, we honor that tradition. We carry forth that legacy. And also, frankly, it's done rarely because it's hard to do well. This was the moment when we could assemble the performing forces that would be up to the task. And I also, I'm always thinking about how we welcome new audiences to opera. Porgy and Bess has proven itself. The critics may say what the critics say. Audiences have been unanimous since the piece was created that this piece is a winner. They come back to it again and again. And for people who have never seen an opera, this is an extraordinary opportunity for us to open our doors. Since the pandemic, we're building new audiences all the time. And most people in Houston will never have seen Porgy and Bess live. It takes a tremendous amount of resources to be able to mount it. I'm so proud that the cast that we have and the orchestra and chorus are delivering at such a world-class level, because I know Houston will have an incredible experience.
How much will this year's production match what was staged in 76? Are you thinking about that?
Our work is about looking back and forward all the time. And even in the course of a performance, theater is ephemeral. What happens on the stage happens only in that one night. And so it's not about hearkening back. It's about taking the legacy forward with the artists that have something to say today. And the message, though, still reverberates. And ultimately, it's a message about, as you mentioned, a character who the world had discarded as worthless, and he will not surrender his own dignity, and he will not choose hate. He challenges his entire community to choose love again and again. And so that spirit has infected our entire company and has really, for your listeners who want to get tickets, they'll have to choose a performance later in the run because we're seeing this tremendous response from the public already.
Houston Grand Opera presents Porgy and Bess starting tonight through November 15th. There's a link to more information at houstonmatters.org. Khori Dastoor is Houston Grand Opera's General Director and CEO. Howard Pollack, Professor of Musicology at UH. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
And that will do it for today's show. The Houston Matters team includes Michael Haggerty, Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Mincho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. On Monday's show, the latest developments in consumer technology with the Houston Chronicle's Dwight Silverman, and we discuss a former UH basketball player's role in a growing sports betting scandal. I'm Craig Cohen. Have a great weekend, then join us Monday for more Houston Matters.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine.